things. The male sperm, which plays the part of factor. The female sperm, first part of the menstrual blood, which provides the matter. Thus we see that Ibn Sina gave the female semen exactly the same role that Aristotle had assigned to the menstrual blood. It is difficult to overstate the importance of Ibn Sina as a scientific and philosophical authority for the pre-modern Europeans. Then we're going to look at Ibn Qayyim al-Jawziyah. Ibn Qayyim took full advantage of the agreement between Quranic revelation and Greek medicine. This is not very clear, probably, but the Hippocrates is in purplish, and the Quran is in bold type, green, and the Hadith is in purple, and commentaries are in red, and his own thoughts in sort of a blue-green. So it starts out, he says, Hippocrates said in the 3rd chapter of Kitab al-Jinnah, the semen is contained in a membrane, and it grows because of the blood of its mother, which descends to the womb. Some membranes are formed at the beginning, others after the 2nd month, and others in the 3rd month. And this phrase about the blood descending to the womb, we saw it when we looked at Hippocrates' slide. That is why God said, here the Quran is mentioned, He creates you in the womb of your mothers, by one formation after another in 3 darknesses. That's Quran 39:6. Then he gives his own ideas. Since each of these membranes has its own darkness, when God mentioned the stages of creation and transformation from one state to another, He also mentioned the darknesses of the membranes. Most commentators explain, and here are the words of the commentators, it is the darkness of the belly, and the darkness of the womb, and the darkness of the placenta. In a second example, we read, Hippocrates said, the mouth opens up spontaneously, and the nose and ears are formed from the flesh. The ears are opened, and the eyes, which are filled with a clear liquid. The prophet used to say, I worship Him who made my face and formed it and opened my hearing and eyesight, and so forth. Here we look at Hippocrates again, and there in the 2nd stage is the same thing we just read. Ibn al-Qayyim is quoting Hippocrates and speaks of the mother's blood descends around the membrane. He could do this, as we have seen, because the educated people of Muhammad's time were familiar with Greek medicine. However, what is important for us here today to realize is that there is no place where the Quran corrected Greek medicine. There is no place where Ibn Qayyim was shouting, hey, you guys, you've got this all wrong. The correct meaning of alaka is that which clings, or leech-like substance. On the contrary, Ibn Qayyim was demonstrating the agreement between the Quran and the Greek medicine, their agreement in error. A final witness is the commentary of Baidawi in 1200 AD. Here we have the commentary, we have the Quran here, and we have his commentary, and here it's been translated, and he says, then from alaka, a piece of solid blood is his explanation of alaka. Alaka is underlined, that's from the Quran. And here's his explanation, a piece of solid blood. Then he goes on, then from a piece of meat from the Quran. A piece of meat originally as much as can be chewed, and so forth. As I mentioned at the beginning of this study, it has been said that the idea of the embryo developing through stages is a modern one, and that the Quran is anticipating modern embryology by depicting differing stages. Yet we have seen that Aristotle, Hippocrates, the Indians, and Galen have all discussed the stages of embryological development during the 1,000 years before the Quran. And after the coming of the Quran, the account of the different stages, as described by the Quran and the Greek doctors, was carried on in the teachings of Avicenna and Ibn Qayyim, and is essentially the same as that taught by Galen and those preceding him. Concerning the bone stage, it's clear, as Dr. Moore demonstrated so capably in his textbook, that muscles start forming from the somites at the same time as the cartilage models of the bones. There's no bone stage where there's a skeleton sitting here, and then and then the muscles are plastered around it. It's equally clear that alaka in the Quran means clot, and that the Quraysh who heard Muhammad speaking understood him to be referring to the menstrual blood as the female contribution to the developing baby. Therefore, we can conclude that during all these years, the Quranic verses on embryology, saying that man is created from a drop of sperm which becomes a clot, were in perfect accord with the science of the 1st century of the Hijra, of the time of the Quran. But when compared with the modern science of the 20th century, Hippocrates is in error, Aristotle is in error, Galen is in error, and the Quran is in error. They are all in serious error. Now we're going to look at a little bit about moonlight. Does the Quran state that the moon gives off reflected light from the sun? Before this was common knowledge. In the Surah of Noah, 71, 15, 16, it says, "See ye not how Allah has created the 7 heavens one above another, and made the moon a light, nur, in their midst, and made the sun as a lamp, siraj?" The moon is called a light, Arabic nur, and the sun a lamp, siraj. Some Muslims claim that since the Quran uses different words speaking about the light of the sun and the light of the moon, it reveals that the sun is a source of light, while the moon only reflects light. This claim is implied very strongly by Shabir Ali in his booklet Science in the Quran, and stated clearly by Dr. Zakrnaik in his video, "Is the Quran God's word?" as you will now see clearly.
The light that we have, the light that we obtain from the moon, where does it come from? So he will tell me that previously we thought that the light of the moon was its own light. But today, after science has advanced, we have come to know that the light of the moon is not its own light, but it's a reflected light of the sun. I will ask him a question. That it is mentioned in this Quran, in Surah Al-Furqan, chapter number 25, verse number 61. "Blessed is he who has created the constellation and placed therein a lamp and a moon, which has reflected light." The Arabic word for moon is qamar, and the light described there is munir, which is borrowed light, or nur, which is a reflection of light. The Quran mentions that the light of the moon is reflected light. You say you discovered it today. How come it's mentioned in the Quran 1400 years ago? He will pause for a time. He won't reply immediately, and then may say, maybe it's a fluke. I don't argue with him. For sake.
Near the end of the video, we heard Dr. Naik explain the Arabic word for moon is qamar, and the light described there is munir, which is borrowed light, or nur, which is a reflection of light. Please do not forget what he said. Munir is borrowed light, and nur is reflected light. Not only is this claimed to be a statement in keeping with scientific truth, but it is also claimed to be scientifically miraculous, since this was supposedly only discovered relatively recently. It is correct that the moon does not emit its own light, but only reflects the light of the sun. But this was known already almost 1,000 years before Muhammad. Aristotle, in about 360 BC, discussed knowing that the earth was round by its shadow on the moon. He could only speak of the earth's shadow crossing the moon if he knew that moonlight is reflected light. If you still insist that this is a miracle of scientific knowledge, then we must ask ourselves, do the Quranic words themselves support this claim? Siraj. First we shall look at Siraj. In Surah Noah, which was read above, in Surah Al-Furqan 25:61, it is simply lamp, referring to the sun. In Surah An-Naba 78:13, Sirajan Wahjan means a dazzling lamp, again indicating the sun. The words Nur and Munir come from the same Arabic root. The word Munir is used 6 times in the Quran. 4 times, Surahs Al-Imran 3:184, Al-Hajj 22:8, Luqman 31:20, and Fatir 35:35. It is the phrase Kitab al-Munir, which Yusuf Ali translate as a book of enlightenment, and Pickthall uses the scripture-giving light. Clearly, this indicates a book which is radiating the light of knowledge. Nothing about reflection. Nur. It says in Surah Noah 71:16 and Yunus 10:5 that Allah made the moon a light. Thus we find that the Quran says that the moon is a light, and it never says that the moon reflects light. Moreover, in other verses, the Quran says that Allah is a nur, a light. Surah An-Nur 24:35, one of the most beautiful passages in the Quran, reads, Allah is the light, nur of the heavens and the earth. The parable of his light is as if there was a niche, and within it a lamp, the lamp enclosed in glass, the glass as it were a brilliant star, and so forth. Thus we see that the word nur is used for both the moon and Allah. Are we going to say that Allah gives off reflected light? I think not. But if you continue to insist that nur, used for the moon, means borrowed or reflected light, and we saw above that Allah is the light, nur of the heavens and the earth, what is the source of this light, siraj, of which Allah is only a reflection? Think about it. If Allah is named nur or reflected light, who or what is the siraj? Well, the Quran tells us who the siraj is, but the answer will shock you. In Surah Al-Ahzab 33:45-46, we find, O Prophet, truly we have sent thee as a witness, a bearer of glad tidings and a warner, and as a lamp spreading light. Here it says that Muhammad is the lamp spreading light. In Arabic, it is wasirajan muniran. Linguistically and spiritually, this is the end of the discussion. Linguistically, siraj and the adjective munir are used together for the same shining thing, the person Muhammad. It's clear munir does not mean reflected light in this verse or in any other verse. It means shining. The people of Muhammad's time understood that the moon was shining, and they were right. Just as the people of Moses' time understood that the sun was the greater light and the moon the lesser light, and they were right. But if you insist that the Arabic words nur and munir mean reflected light, then based on the use of these words in the Quran, Muhammad is like the sun and Allah is like the moon. Does Dr. Naik really want to say that Muhammad is the source of light and Allah is only his reflection? Why are these so-called scientific claims made which no Muslim can support if he makes a serious study of his own Quran? In a dialogue like tonight, it makes honest discussion very difficult, almost impossible. Let us go on and look at the water cycle. Some Muslim authors claim that the Quran shows pre-scientific knowledge of water cycle. What is the water cycle? Here in this slide, you see 4 steps. The first step is evaporation. The water evaporates from the seas and the earth. Second step, it becomes clouds. Third step, it gives rain. And fourth, this rain causes the plants to grow. This is all very straightforward, and everybody knows 2, 3, and 4. Even if they live in a town, they know that clouds come and rain comes and their flowers grow. But what about step 1, the evaporation? You can't see it. It's difficult. And the Quran does not have step 1. Now we're going to look at a prophet from the Bible, a prophet from 700 BC, Prophet Amos, and he writes, He who made the Pleiades and Orion, who turns blackness into dawn and darkens day into night, and then who calls for the waters of the sea, stage 1, and pours them out over the face of the land. Stage 3. The Lord Yahweh is his name. And one other prophet is Job. In 36, 26, 28, at least 1,000 years before the Hijrah, he says, how great is God, beyond our understanding. The number of his years is past finding out. Stage 1, he draws up the drops of water, which distill from the mist as rain. That's stage 3. And then the clouds are mentioned. Stage 2, which pour down their moisture and abundant showers fall on mankind. So here in the Bible, this difficult stage 1 is there from more than 1,000 years before the Quran. Now let us go on and look at mountains. The Quran has more than a dozen verses stating that God placed firm and unmovable mountains on the earth. And in some of these verses, the mountains are listed as either a blessing for believers or a warning for the unbelievers. One example of this is found in the Surah Luqman, 31, 10, 11, where the mountains are one of 5 warnings. It says, he has created the heavens. It says he has created the heavens without supports that you can see, and has cast Al-Ka onto the earth firm mountains, Rawasiya, lest it should shake with you. In the prophets, the Al-Anbiya, 21:31, as one of 7 warnings, we read, and we have set on the earth firm mountains, lest it should shake with them. Finally, in the B, Nahl 16:15, says, and he has cast Al-Ka onto the earth firm mountains, Rawasiya, lest it should shake with you. We see then that the believers and unbelievers are told that Allah has done this great thing. He's thrown down and placed the mountains so that the earth will not shake violently with them. Therefore, we must ask ourselves, what did they understand? In the next 2 verses, another picture is given. The news, An-Naba 78:6-7. Have we not made the earth an expanse and the mountains as stakes, al-jibala otadan, as those used to anchor a tent in the ground? And then the overwhelming, al-ghashiyah, 88:17-19. Do they, the unbelievers, not look at the mountains, al-jibal, how they've been pitched like a tent? Here men are told that the mountains are placed as tent pegs. Tent pegs keep the tent stable. So again, the idea is put forward that the mountains will keep the earth from shaking. A third picture is presented in the word rawasiya, used for mountains. This word comes from the Arabic root arsa, and the same root is used for the Arabic word for anchor. To throw out or cast the anchor is al-qa al-mirsa. So instead of cast the anchor to keep the ship from moving, we have cast the mountains to keep the earth from shaking. From these pictures, it is clear that Muhammad's followers understood that the mountains were thrown down like tent pegs to keep a tent in place, like an anchor to hold a ship in place, to stop the earth from moving, i.e. limit earthquakes. But in fact, this is false. The forming of mountains causes earthquakes. Therefore, these verses present a definite problem. Dr. Maurice Bukai recognized this and discussed them in his book, The Bible, the Quran, and Science. After quoting the above verses about mountains, he says, modern geologists describe the folds in the earth as giving foundation to the mountains, and the stability of the earth's crust results from this phenomenon of these folds. When asked about this, Professor of Geology Dr. David A. Young says, while it is true that many mountain ranges are composed of folded rock, and the folds may be of large scale, it's not true that the folds render the crust stable. The very existence of the folds is evidence of instability in the crust. In other words, mountains don't keep the earth from shaking. Their formation caused and still causes the surface of the earth to shake. Geological theories at the present time propose that the hardened crust of the earth is made of sections or plates, which slowly move in relation to each other. Sometimes the plates separate, like North and South America separating from Europe and Asia, and Europe and South Africa. And sometimes they go together, and they slide next to each other, and they bump